So today is going to be a fun day because, no, it's not Monday. It's Friday. And today I'm going to be riding the Indian Scout. This is the 1100 Indian Scout. To be confused with the, and I say to be confused, with the Indian Scout 60. There are some subtle differences. It's a 1100cc motor rather than a 900cc motor. And it's a lot prettier, so it's sort of like, if you're going to go out with a supermodel, I think you want the pretty one, right? I don't know. You can see that this emblem here is different on the 60. They just removed that. And whether you like that or not, but I tell you what, the engine, that's a beautiful thing. All these highlights and how it looks, the chrome pieces, the Indian motorcycle cap there, I mean, just looks so pretty. If you get this thing in the sun, see if I can do that, you can see if you can see it when I pull it out in the sun. This engine and paint is just amazing. See this red paint, how it has all the flake in it? If you can see that, I'll stop for a minute. You can see all the flake in the paint, but then also in the motor, you can see there's sort of a red flake into the motor. Red and gold is beautiful. Gorgeous! Anyways, we're going to go out for a little ride. And just see what this baby's like. I've been wanting to ride one of these for a long time. They just have not been available to get a hold of. And I think people really like them. So there's a few on the market now, which is kind of nice. And let's start her up and see what she's like. There we go. Nice little sound there. Sounds beefy. Not too loud, but sounds good. Comfortable handlebar position. I wasn't sure about that. Looking at the bike, they look like they're sloped back so far, but it's a pretty good reach to these bars. So if they weren't sloped back like that, I guess you could adjust them anywhere you wanted. However long your arms are, you could move them up a little bit. This is a pretty good spot for me, it seems like. Pegs are right where you'd think they'd be. Let's take her out and see what she's like. She's right off the bat really smooth. And right now, it's cold, so it's got the choke in it. You just wouldn't even, it's an automatic choke because it's fuel injected, but you just wouldn't know it's there. Well, we'll get out on some roads. I'll catch up back with you in just a moment. All right, so I want to do a little bit more of a review on this bike. I'm going to leave it running so we can kind of hear it while we're sitting here looking at it. So if you're not familiar with the Indian Scout, cruiser type bike, of course, has a water-cooled engine. Maybe it'll start up the fan here in a minute, but you can see the frame is the shroud for the radiator, and that's a good look. It doesn't look like it's an added piece like on some of the Hondas and Suzuki, some of those that look like having, an added-on radiator. This is integrated into the motorcycle, making it look a lot nicer. The frame is really a two-piece frame. You've got the rear section and then the front section of the frame. This whole front section here is mounted to the engine, bolted in two places here for the rear section, and then again to the motor, the swing arm, transmission area for the rear set. Belt driven. It says a 6-speed transmission. The Indian Scout 60 has a 5-speed transmission. We'll get on that a little bit later as we ride. It has the alloy wheels on it. I've seen people do some modification to put spoked wheels on it. It looks pretty good. The seat is absolutely outstanding. It's super comfortable. Nice leather seat. It's real leather, so you'll get those stressed looks, which really look cool in the seat, making it look. I don't know. I like that look. It's one reason you go with leather rather than another type of material, because you get these. These are usually from boots and things like that, but it kind of looks cool. Good idea to keep it conditioned. Anyways, exhaust is nice. It's quiet. Let's listen to that exhaust a little bit as it just idles here. Has a good thud here. Let me open up my helmet a little bit. I can hear it a little better. Nice sounding engine. Nice sounding exhaust. It's quiet once you get going. I love how they did this motor, and I really hope this shows up. This kind of flake in the paint on the motor is really cool. It's not just black. It's kind of a brown with this gold red flake in it. There's little tiny specks of blue, and really awesome. The chrome is really outstanding. Not some chintzy chrome. It's really nice. I love how they do the engine. Looks beautiful. And then the paint, you know, this red flake paint is just absolutely gorgeous everywhere. I love that. That's totally cool. I originally thought it was just a flat red paint. Has good suspension. We go around in the front of the bike a little bit, take a look at that light. So, you know, it's got a smaller light on it. It's pretty bright, but it's small. And then they've got the Indian logo here. And your blinkers are just attached to the fork tubes. Just a small speedometer with the minimal amount of display things. It's got your gear selector and mileage, trip. That's about it. And let's give it a little ride around. There's the parking lot. It's a good place to kind of get an idea of how this thing turns, and it turns pretty easily. You know, it's a big cruiser bike, so you don't. I don't lean them over all that far, yes, but this seems to have lots of clearance for turning, so that's a good thing. And then, just making some U-turns, which is really nice. It turns really easy. It's a little bit of a reach to the bar when you're turning sharp. You can just kind of lean forward. Just the big wide bars, you get more of a reach. I know the Honda had these really large, wide bars on it, so when you turned, it was like a pretty good stretch. Man, back out on the road. Power's nice and smooth. Transmission's solid. You can really feel it click into gear. But it's not loud. It doesn't, you know, it has a little bit of a thunk, but not a clank or anything like that. I mean, say somewhere between a Harley Davidson and a BMW. The BMWs have this big clunky transmission. Anyways, the sound is good. It's hard to know if you can hear the sound. It is a pretty quiet bike. Just off the showroom floor, they're pretty quiet. But then once we get out into the country, that makes it kind of nice. It makes some sound when you get on it, but when you're just cruising along, it's nice and quiet. Of course, when you stop, it has that thud, 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 so people kind of look, hey, what's that? And I'm going to catch you on the windy roads here in a minute. All right, so we're out to the more of a windy country road. Give this Indian a little fun on the windy road. Let's see what she's got. Wow. All right, it's up and all fast, that's for sure. Woo! So that bike really moves out. And there's no getting around that. This is a fast motorcycle. 6-speed transmission. So right now, I was kind of touch on the 6-speed transmission a little bit versus the 5-speed transmission, because that's really one of the main differences people talk about between the 60 and the Scout and the 60. So right now I'm cruising around in 5th gear, but really the thing they've done on the 60s, they've taken out 5th gear. So you've got 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 6th. And that's the gearing you have. So you're not missing the top gear, you're just missing the one down below that. But here's the thing, I'm cruising around at 50 miles an hour, and fifth gear just feels right. You know, and a lot of the back roads, you kind of cruise around at, you know, around 50 or something. So I'd have to be in either sixth gear, which is no problem, but it's just, you know, that's the difference, I think. So now I'm going to cruise around at 50 in sixth gear, and, you know, it's really no problem. I kind of like having that fifth gear there, you know, having all six gears, put it that way. I feel like at sixth gear at 50 miles an hour, I just don't have that responsiveness I would want. I mean, it's there, it's kind of fast, but, you know, compared to putting it back down at fifth, and then, you know, I'm cruising at 50 miles an hour, I get on it, she just gets up and goes. Of course, you could run it down a gear, put it in fourth gear, and so maybe you cruise along at 50 miles an hour in fourth gear, but you get less fuel economy, but then you got a ton of power there too. So I don't know. Indian either decided that it was not needed to have all six gears, or they needed a reason to say that the new bike was going to be less expensive than the outgoing bike in a sense. I mean, they make them both in the same year. There's a 2016 Indian Scout, and they're making the Indian Scout 60 in 2016 as well. There's about a $3,000 difference, so you get more engine, you know, and that's worth something, that's for sure. So it's got more power. It's gruntier. It's got that grunt power, and then you've got the engine. You know, the way it looks is a little bit different. You know, it really is a lot prettier with all the chrome and all the accents. So, I don't know, you have to make a choice on that, but I'm liking this. Okay, so that's enough on that, I think. As far as the bike now, I'm in there talking along, and it's really quiet. It's a very quiet motorcycle. You can make it louder, just put some aftermarket pipes on it or pull the baffle out, but people do both. As far as handling, these bikes handle really well. It's got good ground clearance. You really don't feel like you're going to hit the pegs ever. You know, in some bikes, you really feel like you're going to go around a corner and you're going to scrape the pegs, and this one you just don't feel that way. Seating position, laid back, kind of a casual seating position. The seat is so nice because you sit against it. You don't feel like you have to hold on to the handlebars because you're really held on by the motorcycle. The seat's, you know, holding you there with the bike. And I will tell you, you know, I'm running up this in sixth gear. There's a fairly steep incline, though you wouldn't know it on the camera, and it has no issues pulling it in sixth gear. God, if it had a seventh or eighth gear, I don't think it would care either. Bars are in the right position. I really like where they sit. It's real comfortable. Your hands are still going down, but they're stretched out. Pretty comfortable. And the thing I will mention, and what's interesting, the suspension on this for a cruiser bike is exceptional. But I've heard people complain that it's a little stiff, and it's not stiff at all. So people that complain that it's a little stiff are coming off of a different style motorcycle. It's stiffer compared to, say, an adventure bike. There's less travel. I don't have 13 inches of travel. You know, I've got 3 or 4, like 4 or 5, but you know what I'm saying. And so it's not going to go through that travel suspension as much, so they have to make it a little bit stiffer, of course. It doesn't bottom out. But I've not once had this bike bottom out on me. And most of the Harley Davidsons I ride, the first thing I would want to change on them is the suspension, because they bottom out all the time. You know, unless you get like a Springer, some of the Danas have enough suspension that they don't bottom out, and they're pretty nice. But like the Sportsters, going against like a Sportster, the Sportsters are so and the lows, all the lows, they have like 2 inches of travel, and they're kind of soft, so when you bottom out a lot, and that goes right through the spine. This is really comfortable. The suspension's good. It's got nice, soft suspension. It's got a lot of the travel, and I've never had it bottom out. It seems smooth. We could ride this for hours and hours and hours. There's that motor. The power comes on. You've got this grunt of power. This is an interesting power plant because you've got this grunt of power just cruising around at really low RPM, and it's just plenty of power. And it takes you a little bit by surprise at just how much power this motorcycle has when you start revving it out. Most V-twins start running out of juice, up to a certain, at a certain RPM. This just seems to keep going. It's a freight train. The more you get on that throttle, the more RPMs, the faster the thing speeds up, the more power it's got. It's amazing. Just really a nice motor. This is a pretty bumpy road coming down through here, and the bike feels pretty planted. By planted, it doesn't wander, it doesn't wallow. A lot of cruiser bikes will wallow. They start doing this in the corners, and because they're pretty long, and then the rake on the front end is pretty far out, and a lot of them have longer forks. And with the longer forks and the long frames, they tend to develop a bit of flex. This really doesn't have very long forks on it. They're pretty short, so that's pretty stiff. The suspension and the geometry of the bike is, in a sense, stiff. It holds its line really well in the corner, so it doesn't do that wallowing. That's a big plus. I just want to say a big plus. Mirrors are okay, they're decent. They're a little small, but I can see, I guess there's not much vibration in them, so I can see really well out of the mirrors. In fact, they're beyond my shoulders, 90% beyond my shoulders, so the view is amazing. Even though they're not too big, maybe it's just a figment of my imagination, but really great view out of them. They're convex a bit because they say objects in mirror closer than they appear, so that means they are convex a bit. So that's probably why you get a bit more vision out of a smaller mirror. If they're flat, you don't see as much. Like a wide-angle lens. Anyways, beautiful motorcycle. It's real comfortable. I mean, this thing is totally road trip ready. I'm so comfortable with the seating position and my legs. I just feel like I could sit here forever. I guess kind of like sitting on, not really like sitting on the couch, but, laid back. Another thing I'd like to mention that I just thought of as I'm sitting here riding along and it's quiet and I'm having this conversation with you guys, and it's like, there's no windscreen on this bike. And there's not that much wind noise. This is my, I don't know if you can see, the helmet I am wearing is my adventure helmet, which usually has a lot of wind noise associated with, one, the visor, and two, the position of the helmet seems to get more wind noise. And it's pretty darn quiet. I don't seem that affected by the wind. I'm kind of curious now. This is the shape of the bike, I guess, that's keeping some of that wind off of me. Right now I'm only doing, under 40 miles an hour. But the whole time before, 60, 70 miles an hour. Still, not bad. I think there's enough frontal area on this motorcycle that it's pushing, because there's a whole, a low pressure zone right here in front of my body. And I think that's being sucked up by the motorcycle. And I don't feel like at all, even at any speed, that I'm being blown off this motorcycle. Where in some bikes, you're going along, it's just like you're holding on. Well, for the way they've designed the tank and the front of the bike, it seems to create a low pressure zone right here. And so you're not being pulled off the bike at all. Ingenious. Sorry, I'm going to touch back on that wind a bit. You know, after we were going the other direction, we were going with the wind, and now I'm going against the wind. So I just want to clear up that you do feel the wind. It's not a miracle or there's no wind. It's actually, I was going with the wind before, and now I'm going against it. So I figured I should clear that up a little bit. You do get wind just like you would on any other cruiser. Now I'm going, then I'm going against the wind. You can still hear me. There is a little bit of a low pressure system right here in front of me, created by the bike and the tank, which is nice, but it's not as much as I thought it was. So it's always good to clear that tensing up. It's still really nice. Not like you feel like you're being torn off the bike or anything like that. I just wanted to clear up that yes, you do feel some wind. Otherwise, I guess it'd be a miracle bike, wouldn't it? Well, anyway, I love the power of this bike. I'm kind of leaving this on while the red light's going, so we can go see if we can hear the motor a little bit on this. It seems to get quieter when it revs up. That's probably, good exhaust system. I can see cruising through the forest and back roads and having it be nice and quiet, and I love that. And sometimes you want a little bit of a thud, 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 in town, and that's when you're idling, this has it. Other than that, it's pretty quiet. Lots of power. I'm not giving it full throttle. I'm giving like 3/4 throttle. I actually think that if I gave it full throttle, I'd probably spin the back tire. It really does have that much power. Pretty awesome. Ranking bikes is tough, but I've been thinking about that. What would you rank this bike? And people ask, hey, well, how's that Indian? Why do you rank it with all the other bikes you've ridden? And right now, I'm going to say it's my favorite cruiser bike. It is at the top of the list for sure. There's a lot of cruiser bikes I like, but this just takes the cake. I mean, how smooth it is, how refined it is, all the parts are nice. There's not like cheap parts here and there that I have to replace. Just right off the showroom floor, this bike is gorgeous. It runs absolutely perfect. It doesn't need a chip. It doesn't need programmer. It doesn't need rejetting. Just absolutely perfect right off the showroom floor. Brakes work really well. And for a cruiser bike, that's saying a lot. The ergonomics and how comfortable it is and how long I could ride this bike, it's top notch. There's really nothing that beats it. And its looks, it's my favorite looking cruiser bike, without a doubt. It looks beautiful everywhere I go. It's interesting because some bikes, they get different kind of attention. And this bike, I go downtown and I park it and everybody walks up to it. And it's one person asking the other, hey, isn't that an Indian? Is that an old Indian? Is that a new Indian? How come it looks so clean? And they're like, no, that's a new bike. And then they start explaining things to the other guy about it. Hey, it's water cooled, check this out. And all of a sudden there's 3 or 4 people around the bike explaining the different pieces of the bike that they understand. And they all walk away going, God, that's the most beautiful bike I've ever seen. And women and men alike. But women, are saying they appreciate the looks of it just like the men do. And that's unusual. I pull up on a Harley and you park it there. And there's a few women that go, yeah, that's cool, man. But they're not going and taking a detailed look at it like this. So I would say this is more like a beautiful watch. I mean, it's gorgeous. And people want to take a close look at it. Whereas other bikes, they say, yeah, that's cool. And unless you've got it all, sparkled out with all the aftermarket parts. Like I had a Honda, and it was just decked out with everything you could possibly buy for that bike. And people would stop and look at that and appreciate it and go, hey, you know. But I mean, shoot, there was, you know, $5,000 worth of added accessories on top of the bike, the price of the bike. Where this is 100% stock, and you get the same attention. And you know, old guys, young guys, they all love the bike. They all respect the bike. They all have a different opinion. You know, say, hey, Indians are, you know, the best motorcycle on the planet. Hey, did you watch The Fastest Indian? You know, and it's like, and you just get stories. And the old timers that used to ride these things when they were, you know, back in the day when I was a young man, you know, they would say, you know, I rode an Indian Scout from New England to California because I wanted to see the California coast, you know, and they had all these stories, and they just get them everywhere you go. It's just awesome. So, yes, this is my favorite cruiser bike of all time. Right now, this is it. Yes.